So I'm about to show you just a few of the knitting patterns that are on sale on Etsy in the Deplorable Knitter store. We've got some Back the Blue ones, we've got Raised Right, we've got Trump 2020, Build the Wall beanie. These are all patterns. These are not finished products that you can buy. These are patterns that you can buy so that you can make these products yourself. We got a bunch more Trump stuff down here, a Trump with an elephant hat, a walkaway hat. Maybe I'm going to buy that pattern later. That looks like a good one. But you got all these patterns that are available. Now, one of the reasons that they're available on Etsy is because about, a year and a half ago now, the largest knitting site on the internet, Ravelry, banned all support for Donald Trump on their platform. That means that you cannot talk about Donald Trump on Ravelry. That means you cannot sell Trump-related patterns on Ravelry. If you do, they will literally ban your account. Now, this is a problem for a lot of knitters because, listen, like the crafting community, they don't always have their stuff together. So if you want to go and look for knitting patterns, it's really kind of haphazard unless you have specific designers that you really like and are your kind of go-to designers. It's kind of really haphazard to be able to find patterns that you like. Ravelry is one of those things that was so helpful for me when I first started getting into knitting because it was like the one and only repository of a massive amount of knitting patterns, both free patterns and paid patterns. So you really could find a lot of stuff that you might like to knit. And if you're someone like me, like I only like to knit very specific types of things. And so this was actually really helpful for me when I was trying to learn different techniques and that sort of thing. But they then banned all support for Donald Trump around mid-2019 or so, I believe. I actually was in favor of this at the time. My position on this when it happened was like, I don't know why we're talking about politics on a knitting site anyway, so fine. Like, if it prevents people from fighting, whatever. I was actually completely in favor of it. Now, of course, I take a different position because Ravelry's kind of gone insane. But listen, Ravelry is not the only site that's gone insane because the reason that I'm showing you Deplorable Knitter's store is that Etsy is now banning things to sell. Breaking news from Michelle Malkin. This is from last night on December 1st. Trump derangement syndrome strikes crafters again. My friend Deplorable Knitter told me her Stop the Steal hats have been banned on Etsy. Here we go again, folks. You can't even sell a knitting pattern for a Stop the Steal hat. This is absolutely insane. Here is the email that Deplorable Knitter got. Let me just see if I can make this bigger so I can actually read the email. Okay, here we go. This is a message from Etsy's Marketplace Integrity team. We have removed one or more listings from your shop, Deplorable Knitter. In accordance with our prohibited items policy, we've refunded the fees for the listing we removed. You can see the deactivated listing here. Certain types of content are not appropriate for the Etsy Marketplace. Apparently, a knitting pattern just crosses the line. This includes content that promotes or endorses harmful misinformation, including items that can obstruct election integrity. A beanie. Not even a completed beanie. Not even a beanie that someone can buy and wear. This is a pattern to be able to knit your own flipping beanie, and apparently that's not even allowed. The US election is a major focus for many Etsy buyers. I'm not sure why it would be, since Etsy is a place where you're buying crafts for many buyers and sellers right now, and we understand the members of our community are interested in commemorating this election with items that display the election results now that a projected winner of the U.S. presidential election has been announced, not by any official source, mind you. Contradictory declarations of victory or content that disputes the validity of the outcome may be considered harmful misinformation and will be removed in order to minimize confusion about the election outcome. Dude, if you are confused by a knitting pattern, then you have bigger problems that you need to tackle. Even if it isn't a seller's intention to encourage or condone harmful misinformation, Etsy reserves the right to remove items that we determine aren't in the spirit of our marketplace or otherwise violate our policies. Please be aware that continuing to list prohibited items may lead to the suspension of your account. We don't want that to happen. So we ask you please review the rest of your items and ensure that you comply with our prohibited items policy. Well, certainly this makes me want to continue to shop on Etsy, but Michelle Malkin actually points out something interesting that I actually wasn't fully aware of. I think I kind of heard about it in passing, but I just hadn't paid enough attention to it, which is that this whole idea of Ravelry banning conservative related things actually predated Trump by a good number of years. Here's an article that Michelle Malkin wrote in June 2019, Anti-Trump Crafters, a decade-long unraveling. Fun fact, I've been crocheting since I was 10 when my I don't know what that word is, taught me the magic of granny squares. Fellow yarn nerds will understand the heavenly bliss of spending hours at Hobby Lobby or Walmart. I mean, I wouldn't call people who spend hours at Hobby Lobby or Walmart yarners. I actually do have a great affection for Hobby Lobby, I will say. It's definitely better than Walmart, but that's not real yarn, folks. It's not. You got to get into the handmade nice stuff. Anyway, I digress. Immersed in a sea of alpaca, mohair, angora, super bulky, and super saver skeins for blankets, baby clothes, hats, headbands, scarves, bookmarks, and pot holders. Yes, I've made it all. I passed this tradition on to my artsy teenage daughter. Teaming up on a Christmas Afghan for my dad last year was one of my favorite projects ever. Are you surprised? You shouldn't be. Creativity and crafting transcend political ideology, or so you might think. And then she's got the tweet heard round the world in the knitting community from Ravelry. We are banning support of Donald Trump and his administration on Ravelry. We cannot provide a space that is inclusive for all and also allows support for open white supremacy. Dun dun dun. This week, Ravelry.com, one of the internet's most popular gathering sites for crocheters and knitters, with a reported 8.5 million users, publicly smeared and ejected conservative members who support Donald Trump. And then it talks about the banning there, but I don't want to talk about that because that's been talked about over and over again. I'll link this article in the description below if you want to go read it. I actually want to get down here where she starts talking about the greater history. But here's the thing I know from being in contact with conservative knitters and crocheters over the past decade. Ravelry's ideological bigotry is not just about Trump. They simply cannot countenance anyone in their community who disagrees with them on any political matter. During the 2008 presidential election season and into 2009, I heard from Republican hobbyists whose lively discussion boards were shut down on Ravelry. Jana S. wrote to warn that while this may not be making waves in the headlines, there is an upswing in the conservative censorship that has hit cyberspace. A group on Ravelry called The Bunker, which had more than 200 members who discussed GOP politics and knitting patterns, was singled out and shut down after liberal pro-Obama members complained about its presence. Ravelry accused the conservative crafters of a culture of anger and us versus them stance. One of the Bunker's most active members, Melissa, reported to me that Ravelry co-founder Casey Forbes, now Cassidy Forbes, and I'll let you infer whatever you want from that, had replied to right-leaning users asking how peacefully expressing their opinions violated the terms of service by making excuses for the fact that he just doesn't like conservative people on his website. Many of our members are mothers and grandmothers and are completely harmless. We've all been discriminated against because we think and behave differently. Meanwhile, rabid leftists who promoted misogynist sweaters slamming Sarah Palin as C-word went unpunished. A forum titled, "What Would You Do to Sarah Palin?" inviting liberal members to post physical threats was allowed to thrive. The problem here is not that the site owners decided that they don't want an active vocal conservative group on their site. That is certainly their right as site owners. The issue is the double standard and the disintegration of the reputations of all members of the Bunker and the injury and destruction of some members' businesses. The far left is not only tolerated on Ravelry, they're nurtured and encouraged. Their bad behavior goes unchallenged. And this is important to note that Ravelry is not just about, people finding knitting patterns. That's what I use it for. But a lot of people who make money in the knitting community and base their businesses in it, if you're not on Ravelry selling things, it's going to be extremely hard for you to make a living doing patterns and design work and all that good stuff. Ravelry is simply the place that people go to. Now, what's happened I think since Ravelry banned Trump supporters is these new sites are kind of popping up and people are using them here and there. And even popular design, even Stephen West is one of the most popular knitting designers. He also, he tends to be a little woke. I think it's more his business partner that's more woke than he is. I think he just wants to actually knit. But you can even see he's starting to venture off of only selling his patterns on Ravelry. He's actually ventured into Gumroad to make sure that they're available for everyone, which I actually really appreciate and I think is a much better way to handle it. So maybe other sites will pop up. Who knows? This was more than 10 years ago, mind you, long before the latest wave of suppressing, shadow banning, algorithm ringing, deplatformings, and defamation of right-minded people on Twitter, Facebook, and Google/YouTube. The speech-squelching imperative of the far left is a thread that traces back to the 1960s when radical philosopher Herbert Marcuse popularized the repressive tolerance theory of modern progressives. Liberating tolerance would mean intolerance against movements from the right and toleration of movements from the left, Marcuse taught. Certain things cannot be said. Certain ideas cannot be expressed. Certain policies cannot be proposed. In advance of the 2020 election, no space in the internet square is safe from inclusive exclusion. Silicon Valley's overlords, like Ravelry's petty tyrants, have no interest in promoting diversity, discussion, and community. They are bent on decimating debate and dissent while wrapped in thick woolly blankets of hypocrisy and sanctimony. So I just thought that that was actually really interesting information. Now, if you want to support Deplorable Knitter, you can find her on Instagram and you can go to her link tree. And if you want to get that Stop the Steal pattern, you just want to click this top link in her link tree. It's going to take you right here so you can still knit your Stop the Steal hat if you want to. Etsy is not the boss of you. Ravelry is not the boss of you. If you want to knit something, there are other ways to find it. All right, folks, that's all I've got for right now. Listen, I try to do content pretty much every day around news, culture, social justice issues, really anything I find interesting and feel like talking about. If you want to follow along, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You can hit the little red subscribe button right down below. Now, YouTube has been actively unsubscribing 100 to 200 people every single night in one big bash. It's like every single night, like clockwork. They do this. I've caught them so many times. It's like 200 people gone. Boom. Like that. So if you think you're subscribed, just double check it for me just to make sure. You might be surprised. And yeah, just make sure you're giving thumbs up, sharing stuff out. That also really helps me too. All right. That's all I've got for right now. I'll see you guys soon.